Carl was the kind of student teachers admired. He was quiet, respectful, and always near the top of his class. Most people saw him as disciplined and intelligent, the type of student parents wish their children could be more like. But at home, things were different. Gina, his mother, believed strongly in discipline and high standards. To her, second place was never something to celebrate. If another student could come first, then Carl should be able to do the same. Years earlier, she had promised him a trip to the planetarium if he ever reached first place in school. And over time, that promise became deeply important to him. Carl held onto it for years. Every assignment, every exam, every late night studying at his desk felt connected to that goal. But no matter how hard he worked, he always ended up behind the same student, the principal's son. At one point, Gina even confronted the school, convinced the grading had been unfair. But after reviewing the papers herself, she realized the teachers had been right all along. Carl simply hadn't scored high enough. To Gina, pressure was part of parenting. As a single mother, she believed pushing Carl harder was the only way to prepare him for life. Years earlier, she had lost her husband shortly after Carl was born. Later, she introduced Mike into their lives and hoped Carl would eventually accept him as family. Mike tried to connect with him, but something about the relationship never seemed natural. Carl was never openly rude or disrespectful. He simply kept his distance. One evening after dinner, Gina finally asked him directly why he disliked Mike so much. Carl sat quietly for a moment, staring down at the table before finally responding, "I just don't." The answer frustrated Gina more than anger ever could, because it gave her nothing to work with. No explanation, no specific reason, just distance. And over time, that distance only seemed to grow. At school, teachers still described Carl as polite and intelligent, but outside the classroom, something slowly began to change. He spoke less, spent more time alone, and often sat silently during conversations at home, as though he were somewhere else entirely. Gina noticed it, but she convinced herself it was temporary. Stress, pressure, teenage behavior, that was how she explained it in her mind. Then his grades dropped again. This time, Carl fell to third place. Gina took the news far harder than he expected. Almost immediately, she increased the pressure. More studying, more structure, more expectations. Mike quietly disagreed with the way she handled things. One evening, he carefully suggested that maybe Mike needed more support instead of more pressure. But Gina believed easing up would only make him lose focus completely. Despite everything happening around him, there was still one thing Carl deeply cared about: the planetarium trip. So when Gina eventually told him they would still go despite his grades slipping, it was one of the few times she had seen him genuinely happy in months. But the moment she mentioned Mike would be joining them, the mood changed immediately. "You are bringing him too?" "Yes," Gina replied. "He's paying for everything." Carl's expression hardened slightly before he quietly responded, "I'm not going." For the first time, Gina became openly frustrated. She couldn't understand why Carl refused to give Mike a chance, especially when Mike had done nothing openly wrong. But no matter how many times she asked, Carl never explained himself. If anything, he only became quieter. As time passed, the atmosphere inside the house became heavier. Gina wanted a stable family again, and when she later became pregnant, she saw it as an opportunity for a fresh start. But instead of improving, Carl seemed to drift even further away emotionally. Then something unexpected happened. Carl finally reached first place in school. Not only that, he managed to hold on to it. Gina was overjoyed. After years of promises and pressure, she immediately decided to keep her word. The planetarium trip Carl had wanted for so long was finally happening. But when the day came, something felt wrong. While other students laughed and pointed excitedly at the displays above them, Carl barely reacted. He sat quietly, staring ahead as though none of it mattered anymore. Even Gina noticed it. The thing he had spent years chasing no longer seemed capable of making him happy. That was when Mike became seriously concerned. He suggested that Carl might need professional help, but Gina refused to accept the idea. To her, Carl was simply stressed, quiet, and difficult sometimes, but still her son. Months passed, and Carl withdrew even further into himself. Teachers began expressing concern. He barely participated in class anymore. Friends stopped mentioning him. And at home, long silences slowly replaced conversations. Then one evening, Carl asked a strange question. "Mom, why didn't you tell me you were pregnant?" Gina tried reassuring him gently and explained that he would soon have a little sister. Carl nodded quietly, but later that night, Gina admitted something to Mike that she had never said out loud before. "I'm scared. I don't know why, but I feel like I'm losing him." Once again, Mike suggested getting professional help, and once again, Gina refused. She believed love, patience, and structure would eventually bring her son back. But by then, something inside the home had already begun falling apart. Then one night, everything finally collapsed. Neighbors later told police they heard shouting coming from the apartment. Hours later, Mike arrived after repeated calls to Gina went unanswered. The apartment was unusually quiet. Police and emergency responders were called to the scene that same night, and investigators later confirmed that Gina had been attacked inside the home. Carl was found nearby in a confused and emotionally detached state. As the investigation unfolded, evidence pointed directly toward him. The case shocked neighbors, teachers, and even relatives. Many struggled to understand how a quiet student who had spent years trying to meet impossible expectations had reached such a breaking point. But what disturbed people most was not just what happened that night. It was how long the warning signs had gone unnoticed.